Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. Are you moving on and about to move in with Mr. or Mrs. Right, but you're still going through your property settlement? This episode's for you, where we talk about protecting your assets after you've separated and during and after your divorce. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. What an interesting topic.
I know.
I get asked it a lot, though.
I know, and I think it's something you might be so focused on getting through court and getting all this finalised with your ex, but then you might be completely oblivious to what you're getting yourself into with your new partner.
I think that's right. We just need to have that awareness for people.
Yes, and I think some people might be slightly traumatised.
Yes.
And would want to know, what are the legalities around moving in with someone new. So, Mum, today we're going to talk about why you need to, what happens if you're living with somebody else. We're going to talk about prenups, and we're going to talk about the pitfalls to watch out for.
Yeah.
So, Mum, why do you need to protect your assets after you've separated?
Well, there's only so many times you can divide what you've got.
That's true.
Before you're getting down to very slim pickings indeed.
Yeah.
And what you have from your previous relationship, you might want to preserve that for your kids. You might want to make sure that you never have to split that up with someone else again, that you've got security going forward. So, I think we're... once you've lived a bit of life, had a bit of life experience, the importance of your own personal financial security, let alone with kids, becomes to the fore, becomes more important. And we don't want to sort of sleepwalk into another situation where you're having to go through all this again, not to mention the trauma of it.
And sequels to movies never are great, so you don't want to be doing, my divorce part 2,
property
going
settlement
through the same
part
thing.
2. Yes.
And look, there's nothing wrong with saying, look, you're giving it a go, you're trying with someone new, and look, it might not work, but there are ways to protect yourself so you don't have to do the sequel to the court drama.
That's right.
Or the drama of negotiating that you might have had to do in the past.
Or you don't have to spend, like a lot of people find having that prenup, or I called them I love you darling but agreements, having that in place just takes that whole worry off the table, and then they can enjoy their relationship and explore their new love.
So the question then is, to those people who are still going through property settlement, so you haven't, listeners listening, haven't settled property.
No.
But they're moving in with a new partner because maybe it's taken them 7 years in court, or 2 years, or
7 years.
Who knows, or maybe 1 year, or whatever. It's taken a long time. They just want to move on with their lives.
Of course.
They want to move in with Mr. or Mrs. Right. What are the legalities behind still having a property settlement but moving in with this new person?
There's no impediment to it. The only legality really is that...
And this is general advice only?
General advice, yeah. If you haven't got divorced, you can't marry someone else. If you've been married,
yes,
you can't
but what
marry
about
someone else.
Property?
But with property, no, a lot of people just move on. I mean, that's life happens, doesn't it?
But if you move on, move in with someone new, and you guys buy a house together, does that house then get put in the property settlement?
Your share of it becomes relevant to property settlement, and it becomes, but it might be like a separate part of the pool. Okay. So the full court in the family court has said no one's expect to go lives to go into sort of limbo or freeze while they wait for property. So things happen, time moves on, people buy other things with other people. Just keep track of where the money came from. And that will get dealt with in a different way in the main family court in your marriage or your first partner separation. But at the same time, Laura, you need to think about how you're going to arrange things with this new partner if you've bought a house together, and if things go pear-shaped.
What are you going to do this time?
What are you going to do this time? Are you going to have another fight in the family court, or will you make an agreement? You can make a prenup agreement, or like prenuptial means before you get married, but it's also, or you can have a pre-cohabitation agreement, or you can have a cohabitation agreement. You can make one that anticipates what you might get from the property settlement. You might not know how much, but you can put in there that, Laura is in litigation with, Francis, and the property settlement matter has not yet been resolved, but any property that Laura gets from that property settlement is her own separate property, and, in the orders, in the prenup, you'd make sure that that doesn't get divided with anyone else.
Okay, and that's obviously hypothetical, because I'm not in the proceedings with Francis. Actually, that's one of my best friends' name, which is hilarious. So what about then? What are the legalities? Generally speaking, when you move in with someone, what's the magic date where all of a sudden everything you've got technically is now in a property pool?
That's a scary date, but it's 2 years.
So you move in with them even if you don't get married. It's 2 years from living together.
Yep. Unless you've got a baby together, or you substantially combine your assets together. And it wouldn't be fair if you busted up after 12 months with the property. If you put so much money into someone else's stuff and then you split up after 12 months, and it just wouldn't be fair for you not to be able to get some of that back. The court will look at it then. Okay. Or if there's a baby being born, then you don't have to last together for 2 years before you are regarded as a de facto couple.
And because we've had questions about this, and Mum's response to one of the questions she wrote on Instagram, the lady said, I've been told that you shouldn't have a baby during proceedings. What are your thoughts on that? And Mum said, nothing, go live your life. General advice only. But I guess the question there is, so why is it not 2 years if you have a baby?
Well, if you think about it, if you're in a relationship with someone and you don't last for 2 years and you don't mingle your finances, having a baby trumps all of those things, really. You are part of a couple, and the baby will live with one or both of you at different times, and therefore the court's just said no. In that circumstance, we're going to say you guys have accelerated that 2 years. You've definitely become a de facto relationship, because it's all what is a de facto relationship. And when they brought in the legislation, it looked so broad. I had someone say, well, that just means if we spend 3 nights in a backpacker hostel with another person, that's a de facto relationship. So they had to kind of
really nail it down.
Nail it down and sort of make it more obvious.
What if you say, we're just friends. We were just friends living together. We weren't together.
Well, the question of a de facto relationship is a question of fact. So there are a lot of people who challenge the idea that there was a de facto relationship at all, and they can bring an application to the court and ask the court to make a declaration either that there was a de facto relationship or that there wasn't a de facto relationship. And there's a whole stack of case law, and it's very sticky beaky, like who cooked what, when they slept together, did they go to weddings? So you'd have lots of photos of things together as a
like
couple.
That, where we've done an episode on separation under
after
one roof.
Divorce. Yep.
So if you're separated under one roof, that Mum said one of the things for the divorce is you've got to kind of prove you weren't going to weddings together, you weren't cooking meals together.
You weren't presenting as a couple to the world. Okay. And so the court will have a forensic look at it, and they'll go, you know what, on all that evidence, I think you were just flatmates. Yeah. Or, you know what, on all of that evidence, it was so the test is live together on a genuine domestic basis, whatever that means, for a period of 2 years. And
so I guess don't rely on you thinking, I'm just going to say we were flatmates because then I won't have to worry about the legalities.
We never mingled our money, so that means we shouldn't. Yeah. We're not. So it still
doesn't. So if you don't mingle your money, you don't mingle your profits, you just live together, you're still de facto.
Yep.
Okay.
If you've moved in together.
So that's a really important note. And I know everyone probably listening to this is focused fully on getting divorce, getting the settlement for property, getting children's settlement, dealing with domestic violence or whatever else you're trying to deal with that. Of course, you're probably going to find someone to be your new partner and support you. And like people do, like if it's been going for 5 years.
I certainly hope people do
are finding new partners and moving forwards with their lives. So it's important not to miss
Yes. What's happening
at the same time. So, and we're not saying, oh, you're going to be divorced again, but we're saying sometimes you're not thinking completely clearly and you do have your blinkers on when you're going through separation and divorce.
Well, here's the test. You didn't get married or start your relationship with your ex-partner thinking it was going to end.
Yes.
Otherwise, you would have done a prenup or something, probably.
Yes.
So we all have... Things happen, people change, you know, and so this is just, I think of it as kind of like planning, just financial, just like you get a will.
Well, in a business, when you're setting up a business, and I'm a business coach, you have an exit plan. You say, okay, if I'm going into partnership with this person, how do we enact an exit plan? How are we going to get out of this? And then that stops any legality dramas. So, Mum, the question to you is for number 4 when we talk about number 3, we're talking about prenups. Do you have to go to a lawyer and pay lots of money to get a prenup, or can you do it yourself?
Sorry to interrupt this episode, but we have a really important announcement that very well might just help you out.
Are you feeling confused, lost, scared, and overwhelmed by the family law legal jargon and processes? Join the club. Now it's your chance to empower, educate, and equip yourself with the legal know-how and tools you need to get divorced and finally settle. Introducing the DIY Divorce Blueprint, created lovingly by Mum and me. We've downloaded Mum's brains into 42 video lessons, along with over 100 templates and worksheets that you can use to create and settle your property and children's matters. Follow our guide and steps and templates to get yourself finally settled in divorce. Use it as a guide with your lawyer or without, but hopefully using this DIY Divorce Blueprint, you can stay out of court and you can get it settled and sorted at a fraction of the price. Click the link in the show notes to find out more, or go to thedivorcecourse.com.au/enroll. See you then. Mum, the question to you is for number 4 when we talk about number 3, we're talking about prenups. Do you have to go to a lawyer and pay lots of money to get a prenup, or can you do it yourself?
You can't do it yourself.
Ah, poop.
Yeah.
Can you have some sort of agreement with your partner, or it just doesn't stand the test of time?
The law is that people who sign a proper agreement under the Family Law Act are doing a very important thing. They are saying to the family court, you have no jurisdiction over our relationship. So to do that, the court has set out the steps that need to be taken. And unless all of those steps are properly taken, the court still has the right to come in and make some sort of property settlement. So they are very cautious in allowing someone who might have, say, more power in a relationship. Remember, you talked about being starry-eyed, and they're very, very careful that one person can't kind of persuade the other to enter an agreement, and to their detriment. So I don't think you can do them on your own. I think that a prenup is only as good as it is drafted.
Okay.
And if it fails on points, it's just a piece of paper. The court doesn't have regard to things that you just write up between yourself, except in evidence, like as a way of saying proof of what you had at the beginning. They might look at it for that.
Okay, so it might be an idea then, if you can't, and this is general advice, I'm not giving the advice, but I'm thinking out loud, would you be taking note of who's spending money on what, who's bringing what into what, and just keeping a note of that? Does that help if you don't get a prenup and you are going to end up in divorce later on?
Well, no, income doesn't really help much.
Okay.
Because, in a marriage or in a de facto relationship, if it gets defined as one, the court says what your earnings aren't what matter, as long as both of you are sort of contributing to the house. But there might be things like if someone's going to, I don't know, install a garage on a property and it's not in their name, they're doing it for someone else, they might want to keep all those records for later on for proof. Okay. And that would be a situation, I think, where if the people separated before the 2 years, that's one where it would be unconscionable and unfair for the person who's got the house now with a nice new garage
to kick him out.
Keep it.
Be like, bye.
Well, they can kick them out, but they can't kick them out for free. They would need to pay something.
Okay.
So
how much does a prenup cost?
Oh, God, very dear.
What's very dear?
Well, I've heard of them from $3,000, and I've heard of them up to about $10,000.
Okay.
And both of you need a lawyer. It's very expensive because it's worth it. If you spend $2,000 and it doesn't work, you've wasted $2,000.
So
$4,000 and it does work, then it wasn't dear because it worked.
you save lots of money. So I guess it's that you got to weigh it up.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And you have to have lawyers. Each of you has to have lawyers. Each of you has to get a certificate of legal advice. And each of you has to have had advice, even if it is, don't sign this. It's crazy.
Okay.
You know, and I have often given that advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've given the advice by the lawyer not to sign it, it's crazy, and you sign it.
Yep. Well, then
Is it
you're
working?
stuck with it. Yep.
Okay.
You're stuck with it. The court says they don't have the power to stop a person making a bad deal. But if that person who made the bad deal later gets a kind of buyer's remorse and says, "Oh, I wish I'd tried harder," then they can't sue their lawyer who said you shouldn't have signed this.
Okay. And that's why lawyers have lots of insurance payments.
Yes, and financial agreements, what they used to call binding financial agreements, are really an expensive source of litigation and a worry for our insurers. So generally only accredited family law specialists will do them.
And of course, all of this, everything we ever say is general advice, or what Mum says is general advice, and I just talk rubbish because I'm not a lawyer.
Well, you're asking the question from
Yes.
the point of view of the listener.
So, Mum, okay, so get a prenup. If you're moving
If
in
you
with
want
somebody
one,
else, if you want one, otherwise be prepared to go through the same thing all over again if you've been together
or
for 2 years.
hope that you're amicable at the end and
Yes.
can just divide it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is something you have to think about. And look, some people will be totally traumatised and will be thinking about it all the time.
A lot of people say, and it's really sad, I'm never doing this again. I'm never going to have another partner ever. And that's really sad. So I just wanted people to know you can have another partner and still be a little bit savvy at the same time.
So if you don't get a prenup, can your ex go for anything that your new partner brings into the property?
No.
Okay, so
Unless you own it.
okay,
Yeah. But again, if you've got an arrangement or if someone else has it's getting very tricky there. As soon as I use the word equitable and unconscionable, I'm thinking, no, I'm out of the realms. So no, I can't really answer that question. But the property that your ex can go after is anything in your name.
Okay.
And if you've bought a house with someone else, then that always comes into the equation.
Right.
And then they look at it, how much equity is there? Who put the money into that house?
Yeah.
You know.
What about children? Is there any claim? So if you're living with somebody else's child, do they have claim?
Oh, that you're getting into wills and estates now.
Yeah,
Yes. I don't think so normally. It's not my area of expertise. And
Okay.
every state is different.
Okay.
So they become stepchildren of a person.
Yeah.
And the circumstances will vary, I guess. So no, I can't tell you.
I guess
that
when
advice.
you're considering moving in with someone and it is de facto or you get married, you know, consider your wills, consider
You've got
your
wills, powers of attorney.
prenup, think about it all, and you may save yourself a million years of headaches.
Well, also, too, a lot of people have already got a will, but it's their ex who's in the will.
Oh, gosh.
And it's their ex who's got the power to turn the life
Oh my God! You do not want to leave your
machine off.
Oh God! You'd better be hoping it's
And the
amicable.
life support, yes.
Oh,
so you know,
no.
so if you're doing that, getting yourself out of that risk, and don't forget a lot of people have got now nominated death benefit in their super.
and life
So look at all
insurance.
those. Reminder to everyone: set your phones, go and ask someone, get it done. But if you do that, then it's natural to think, okay, if not my ex, who then? And then you can think about whether your new relationship, if you've got one, is secure enough that you would put them, or will you put your sister or your brother?
children, yeah.
That sort of thing.
You don't want your kids flicking your life support off either.
Well, it depends how old you are.
That's true. Now, number 4, lastly, is pitfalls. So are there any pitfalls with prenups or living together, protecting assets? Have you ever seen anything?
Holy cow.
Sorry, Ma. Pitfalls of protecting your assets when you move in with someone new.
Yeah, I don't think there's a downside to protecting your assets, except that it isn't very romantic.
That is a pitfall.
Yeah, that's a pitfall.
I love you sign this.
So it's tricky to do in a sensitive way. What, don't you think we're going to last? Don't you love me? You know, that sort of thing. But then I'd be thinking, manipulative and controlling. So that's one pitfall. The other pitfall we already talked about, don't get a cheap one.
Yeah.
If you try to do it without a lawyer, you're wasting your time.
There's no point.
No point. No. You've got to do it under the Family Law Act to avoid going back under the family law courts. And your lawyers, if you use one, will give you heaps of advice about doing an agreement. Like, you don't want to do one that's really unfair, because that won't hold in the future probably.
So really, getting a prenup it's like doing the reverse of what you've done in your last relationship. You're doing the legal stuff at the beginning, and maybe you'll never need to use it.
There's another pitfall I should mention. Again, we're all doing preliminary, like I'm just doing broad brush law. But if you're in a relationship and you haven't been together for 2 years, you haven't mingled your money, and you don't have a child, and you do a prenup at 3 months, 4 months or whatever, you're actually kind of creating that prenup, that de facto arrangement, by putting in the agreement that you're in a de facto relationship. So there's kind of a balance, isn't there, to be done.
So wait until 2 years in and then
it's hard to know.
That they sign it.
Or be ready to kick them out if they don't.
So here's the prenup. We're not signing it.
A lot of people will just do the prenup agreement at the beginning, but you do need to know that you are actually creating at law a de facto relationship, which otherwise might not have been. Yeah.
So you've got to weigh up, do I wait until like 1 year and halfway through the second year to get it signed, or see how it goes, try out the relationship? I know some people who've moved in and then moved back out and moved back in, because sometimes it's tricky with the kids, like, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I guess, look, I think the good news is, if you're listening to this, perhaps you have moved on.
Yeah, I hope so.
And you are proactively protecting your assets. I know it sounds greedy and selfish, but if you have been through the divorce situation and the property settlement, you don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, and you don't want that set of legal fees as well.
Yeah, it is definitely cheaper than a trial.
Oh yeah.
So I guess, you know, if you've got. What if you've got nothing? What if you move in with them and you've got nothing?
Well,
you like literally you're divorced with the last person. You got like $5,000 and the car that's falling apart. Do you bother?
Depends how much the other person's got.
Oh, okay.
And if they're really wealthy, they'll want to be protecting your assets.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of ladies who have more assets than the men as well. So it's generally the person with the assets who wants to do the protecting. So if you've got nothing, it's likely or possible that you'll be asked to sign one by the other person.
Yeah, which is only fair.
Yeah, but in itself it might give you more satisfaction and more protection, because it might arrange for an amount that you receive. We look at them in 5-year chunks.
Okay.
So a financial agreement can go for a couple of years, or it can go on forever, but then usually is a graduated amount of payment or settlement as time goes by.
Okay.
Because you can understand an agreement that is fine and fair after 12 months together might not be fine and fair after 25 years and 4 kids, or even 10 years and 2 kids.
Oh, wow. That sounds complicated.
That's why they're expensive, and yes, they're complicated.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mum, for sharing that.
That's okay.
And hopefully... Oh, question. Have you ever had a successful prenup?
What do you mean? Well, has it been challenged?
You've written one.
Oh, yes.
And it's been challenged?
Not in court. Let me see. I haven't had them challenged.
Well, that's good.
I haven't had them challenged.
Okay. Mind you, Mum's not doing them.
No.
But I was just wondering.
But I have had a couple where after they draw up the agreement and present it to the other party just moves out.
Oh, okay. So that is...
Or gets kicked out.
That is something you got to think about. If they, you know, putting that to your partner, if they don't want to sign it, I guess that's...
You make your mind up.
You make your mind up.
Is it more important to you or not? But I'd look at the control issue really.
Yeah, that's hard.
It is hard.
There's a lot of
they're not out
movies
for the money.
There's a lot of movies about prenup signing with Marilyn Monroe, and
I know.
But it can just be everyday normal people who just need to protect their assets. Because you're right, Mum. Dividing yourself in half again would be really, really like it's a restarting on the financial ladder.
Yes.
Splitting a house, splitting cars, splitting your savings. You're starting again, and you don't want to do that again and again.
And the older you get, the less time you've got to accumulate more assets. You'll often find people where their first partner, gave his first ex or her first ex everything and just walked away. That was when they were younger, but as they get older, they think, oh, hang on, I can't do that again.
Yeah.
So you'll be often shocked that a person will do a different thing on a second relationship than they do on a first.
Yeah, so don't judge it based on what they did with their last person. No. Okay. All right, well, thank you, Mum, for that, and we wish you all the best, anyone who's listening, to their new relationships, and hope that you have a more successful relationship and a nice, lovely life.
A triumph of hope over experience. And, Brian and I have been together 28 years. We've been married 28 years.
Yeah.
So it does work sometimes the second or third time. Just keep hoping. All the best.
All right, thank you for your time, Mum. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.